not happening extremely slowly, right? The ideas of sustainability were around, floating around for many, many years. I think once they started to coalesce, which I would say it's about 10 years ago, and came into the attention of things like the World Economic Forum and other gatherings of leaders in the industry. Uh, I think it's moving at a fairly rapid pace. We see legislation that supports it. We see actions from, you mentioned, especially the insurance industry, which is at the cutting edge of risk. So I would say it's moving slowly by human clocks, but by industrial clocks, by the way we diffuse technologies and knowledge, I think we are in a fairly good shape in my estimate.
Well, let's say, to use a mathematical term, the first and second derivative is positive. It's increasing at an increasing rate, but it cannot be diffused because of Western elites preaching to Southerner developing country engineers and governments. It diffuses because adopting these policies and programs work, because it works, because it's documented it works, not because it's being preached and said you should do this and we should do that. It's being adopted because it works. And that's the beauty that makes the first and second derivative and diffusion positive.
To keep you in the mathematical realm, the second derivative is the acceleration of the first. The first one is the speed, the second one is the acceleration in classic physics.
And,
So
and, and that's what's happening.
if it's positive, we accelerate.
Yeah, it's happening, but with a long way to go. It's a lot. We started at a very low base at 0 Kelvin to continue at a whereas 30 years ago, this was not a discussion in the engineering community, or 40 years ago in the engineering community, or even the economic community. But it's not adopted, and now it's moving fast.
I'll take you to a different area, and this is the political discourse around sustainability. And we see uh, a lot of political pressure. Of, of course, some countries ban the term ESG, so we have to use sustainability instead. So, but politicians picked on the idea, and I think eventually that's a positive in my mind. This debate on the political level, even if some of it is regressive, this debate about sustainability, about ESG, I think eventually will become part of decisions in elections, will become part in decision, it will transfer to the legislative system and so on. So maybe a question in form of a question: how do you see the current political environment around sustainability? And we have a new president that it's on the record in the US. It's on the record that sustainability or ESG is a hoax.
Well, a clever man would stay away from political prognostication. I'm a commercial person, but I'll offer a few thoughts. Um, uh, After World War II, the United States was, forget the number, something like 60% of the world's industrial capacity. Um, it may have been 70%. I can't remember, but it was more than the majority of the industrial capacity. Well, things have changed. If I had to bet, I would bet there are more English reading, English reading, and English writing engineers coming out of China than in the United States for postgraduate. If you throw in India, there's no question about that. There's no question about that. You're going to see Nobel Prizes, not just from the classic group of countries of Russia, United States, Israel, Germany, what have you. There are smart people all over the place now, and information flows. You can't stop it. It actually cannot be stopped. So with respect to sustainability, it's not just the United States and Europe that plays a role here. Climate change is affecting China in significant ways. It's affecting India. Do we need to discuss Brazil, what the impact is in Brazil of droughts, okay, and how we need those trees so we can all breathe? I mean, these factors are there. So without addressing sustainability issues, the future, well, parts of our future, uh, I'm an old man, but part of my life is not going to be as good as as I would like it to be. All right, and these countries, Brazil's a powerful country. They don't want to be dictated to, and India cannot be dictated to, and China cannot be dictated to. So the fact that sustainability issues are affecting the livelihood and futures of these countries, not just these countries. We could throw in Indonesia, South Africa, a lot of other African countries. This is a powerful force. So the world is really different. And I added one little footnote. When I started going to the UN Conference of Parties a long time ago, maybe there were only a few thousand people, 10,000 people at these meetings. At the last meeting, there was 50,000 of your closest friends and another 10,000 people beating on the door to get in. And the people who are beating the door to get in and the people at those meetings understand what you and I are talking about right now. Okay, that's a very, very powerful force. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. Whether or not this is the idea or not, I cannot say. But I would say that sustainability is an idea whose time has come already years ago, but now the word means something to high school students, college students, and lay people around the world. How it will be implemented, I cannot tell you, but I can't prognosticate about the policy side, but I can on the commercial side.
So absolutely. And by the way, in the commercial side, I'm looking at the Golden Gate behind you. And if you think of California, which is last I checked, the fifth largest economy in the world, I think it's ahead of Germany now, or a little bit behind. The California has enough economic power to actually legislate on sustainability. They did, and their legislation is coming close to the European legislation. So we see alignment even inside the US on sustainability. Also, I may add that at AKFI we have many interns which are coming and they graduate. They do undergrad and graduate and even some postgrad in sustainability. So I'm very optimistic about the next generation that is trained. These people will find jobs, will be in the boards of directors of the companies. They will guide companies through sustainability, as you mentioned at the beginning at the discussion. So I think the political clock moves, the political pendulum moves back and forth, but the economic one, it's on steady course, as you mentioned.
Well, I would just make a point that um, emissions credit trading actually started in California in 1976. Actually started in California in 1976. When I left US EPA to develop this first brokerage firm called Arex, where did I set up my first office? LA, Los Angeles, because that's where the action was. That's where trading was taking place in the local level. Where was the second office? The San Francisco Bay Area. Again, because they were adopting rules and regulations that said you can comply with this air pollution regulation in two ways: put on the following technology, or pay somebody to reduce the similar emissions in the same airshed, which created a whole, unfortunately, from my point of view, a lot of competition. Other people want to get into the marketplace. They say, I'm making money. They want to go into the marketplace. So again, you're building that human capital where it diffused. So here's a case again, you brought up California, where the first example of trading was taking place 1976, incorporated to the U.S. Clean Air Act in 1977. The action was in California and LA, San Francisco, but then migrates to Houston, Texas, where there was a large air pollution problem there, and trading is most effective, then adopted nationally for the acid rain regulation, and then under the UN FCC framework, conventional climate change for carbon. And now you see it applied in other areas. So whether it's called trading or just common sensible management, who cares? Who cares how we call it ESG, sustainability, ABC? Doesn't make any difference. It will be invisible because these men and women who are graduating from these programs, when they're adopting it, they're going to be adopting it in a common sensible way with key parameters. How do we measure? What is the measurement? Who's doing? If it's in the strategic plan, is it now in the operational plan? We have it in the strategic plan, but is it being operationalized? And we won't even be calling it ESG. It'll be call it. I'm not sure what it will be called,
Save,
but it's the same thing.
savings. You
David,
know, we save on water. We
yeah,
save on
uh,
water. We recycle water. This this is just savings. You know, it's cost reductions on the balance sheet.
yeah. So someone will create a new name. We don't even know what that name will be in the future.
Actually, one professor from the UK asked me for he's writing a book on accounting, and I suggested to him to figure out how you account for savings, because usually you do not account on the balance sheet. On the balance sheet, you put your expenditure and your cost and your revenue, but you don't put how much money you avoided. I call it, cost avoidance by, for instance, using renewable energy. And those have to come into the finance, into the accounting part. So I think this diffusion is happening. I'm very happy to, again, I'm very optimistic about it. People are telling me their stories about sustainability, why they shift. I've seen people in mid-career shifting to sustainability. They come to secondary education to get into that. And I'll tell you a story because we talked about China, and I worked a lot with China, with Chinese. And I remember one night in Buenos Aires, far away from Beijing, where my colleague was from. And I asked him, "What do you like? What do you really like in Buenos Aires? Are you here the first time, out of China?" He said, "Yes." And probably not knowing Spanish, he said, "I like the quality of air." He was coming from Beijing. This is one individual that has his own measurement about sustainability.
I understand. I've done work in China in the city of Urumqi. I think it was the second or the most polluted city in China at that time. You didn't see the sky from like September until like June because they didn't have scrubbers and SO2 scrubbers in particular matter was floating up in the air from coal-fired power plants. People don't like that. People like to breathe. And
Yeah,
that's what's driving. So whatever you call it, it's the same thing. All right. And governments have to respond, or there's a lot of pressure from the ground, and people and people vote with their feet. They vote with their feet. If they can move, they will move. Okay. Uh,
and they vote with their wallets. They will, turn on the same way today we look at labels, and there is an initiative to put labels on the passports of provenance in Europe, right, for different products, forestry products and so on. But going back, people will turn a product upside down and says, okay, what's on the label? How sustainable am I buying? What's the next one and the next one on the shelf? And these are micro decisions, right? But together, as you mentioned, they make an economic statement, a political statement, a legislative statement in itself. And by the way, you advise multiple governments. giving you the magic wand, do you think sustainability policies work? I got it already. The magic wand has to be a carrot. I got that part. So how to
Well,
incentivize governments to act?
that's beyond my ken. I keep thinking of different stories that happened when I was just trying to push emissions trading, and I helped set up a green NGO in Germany, and I was talking to one of my associates there about air pollution credit trading, and he said to me, and this was a long time ago, he said to me, the idea of credit trading doesn't sound good to the German ear. I said, what do you mean? He said, it sounds like indulgences, indulgences. And I remember my history a little bit and Martin Luther and the notion of indulgences. And while that makes sense to maybe 70% of the German ears, it made sense to maybe 10% of the US ears, because I'm not sure that there's a lot of people who remember their high school or college education and Martin Luther and indulgences. So that word credit didn't translate the way it translated in the United States. And that was true in other countries. So I don't know how sustainability translates to the Russian ear or the Chinese ear or the Indonesian ear. I just don't know that. But I was shocked. I don't mean like electric shock, but I was surprised because I thought credit means the same thing to everybody. You get a credit for your taxes. You get a credit for washing the dishes when your mom says you don't have to. You get a credit. I was like, wow, and it took me back. So this was a long time ago, and I remember this like this was maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and I remember it 40 years, how a simple word like that affects a country's ability to adopt regulatory programs or motivational programs.
Well, they put credit in their constitution in Germany. So basically, the government is not allowed to spend more than I don't remember get credit more than one or a couple of percentages over the GDP over. So they have a huge problem. Actually, I think the current government or there'll be a new election in Germany for a new government because exactly of this issue of credit. So credit it's a it's a politically charged word even today.
And sustainability, how will that trade into different languages and different cultures, different folkways, mores, history? It's difficult to see.
Well, I have a simple metric, and if we want to challenge, and you work with a lot of CXOs, CEOs, executives, politicians, I would ask them the counterfactual question: do we want to be unsustainable?
That's a good, that's a very, that's a very good point. But you're talking about the elites, the not only I don't mean elites, the richest people. I mean people who have a broader vision, of a broad vision of the world. The word makes sense to that group of people, which is not 5 or 10 people in every country. There's thousands and tens of thousands in every country. But translating that into legislation or regulation is a crazy quilt of stuff that's hard to comment on from every country's different about how they approach these kinds of issues. But I'm in the commercial world is different. In the commercial world, if it works, I want to use it. If it's cost effective, I want to use it. And what we're talking about in terms of cost is minimal. In terms of effect, significant.
Right. And I'll add only one other element to many that could be added, and this is if my competitor is doing, then I must do it.
Exactly, exactly. Well, I'm thanking you for your time. I'm not sure if I can add any sunlight to
Would
these
like to take you a little
cloudy.
bit more to the area of AI, and we have a closing question with recommendation, especially with so much experience and so much leadership you provided. But let's go a little bit deeper into the AI because I know you're
Fine.
spending most of the time now thinking about AI and going back to the crystal ball. And you already indicated some elements, but I'd like to put it together. Where do you see AI helping us in communicating? What it's clearly in reporting, you mentioned about the quality of data, but where AI sits on this sustainability effort. And by the way, AI has right now also a darker side with the size of the data centers and cloud computing that we need to throw at it to function. So it's like nothing in the world is not perfect. Where do you see AI as a tool for humanity?
Well, I'll just comment quickly on the data side. Quantum computing is not here, but it's coming. Quantum computing is coming so fast, it's making everybody's head spin. And that's going to be revolutionizing as the alphabet, because it'll be that so many problems will be solvable. Again, the problem will not be quantum computing or software. It's going to be our ability as human beings to adopt the recommendations and the knowledge that's being generated. In terms of AI, well, that's what my company's all about, and working on this 7 days a week. And again, the problem is solvable by technology, but is it adoptable by people? AI is. It's malleable. It's malleable to your needs, your competitors' needs, the pharmaceutical industry, for managing a college, university, what have you. It depends on what is the application. So the application for shipping will be a lot different than the application for ESG, sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. But once it's adopted in the organization and other people see this is helping me be a better trader, this particular tool that we got from IBM, or maybe they got them from hopefully my company, that now it's helping us manage our carbon footprint over here. So there will not be an AI center within a company. No, not at all, not at all. But there'll be multiple centers, not even in terms of development, but in terms of application. And some companies will be specializing in the development of the tools. That's what my company's all about. And we're going to have competitors developing the tools, but inside the company, there will be multiple users of these tools, and we won't even use the term AI. Again, no one uses the term Excel. They say, give me a spreadsheet. Well, here's the problem. If it's a simple problem, I can use a spreadsheet. If it's a more complicated problem, it's a management information system, database management. If it's very complicated, I need AI, blockchain, and things we haven't even thought of yet. But quantum computing is going to be here, not tomorrow or next week or next year, but we can anticipate it. We can see, again, the diffusion curve and the progress that's being made technologically, and that once perfected, there'll be a rush. You will be a rush, because it's going to be so powerful to solve all sorts of problems within specific domains, for pharmaceutical, chemical, you name it. And that's as far as my crystal ball becomes cloudy after that.
Well, it's clear and far-fetching, definitely. And actually, what's the name of your company? You
Oh, Carbon Note, Carbon Note.
Note.
Carbon
Very
Note
good name.
dot AI. Yeah, yes. But the tools are generally applicable to not just carbon, it's what I know, but to ES&G, impact investing, shipping. Um, Actually, it's domain agnostic. Like Excel is domain agnostic. our basic core is domain agnostic, but of course you apply it first to what you know best. And this is 40 years of my experience, so that's what we're applying it first to.
Wow, wow. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. By the way, I was talking to a librarian a couple of days because I say AI is like a librarian, right? You ask the librarian to find a book and you say, look, I need for this and that, and it depends on you as a user knowing what to ask for. And he said librarians are detectives, there are book detectives. So they will try to find, right? They will ask you questions until they find the right thing for you. So I like the metaphor. I want to pass it on.
Well, that's an interesting metaphor, but AI is much more than just facts. AI is based on all these facts that we generate from reputable sources and from sources that are biased positively or negatively toward whatever you're talking about,
Right.
generating useful information. So the facts go in, hopefully useful information. What do I do? How do I respond to this? Because a book doesn't always tell you that, but you start with the book. You've got to start with the books.
Sure.
And then how do I integrate this where a human being is involved? We take our human capital from high school and college, postgraduate, what have you, and now we generate useful information for my boss who wants to know what should I
Right.
do. But AI is going to replace much of that. AI becomes basically a research assistant in a box. That's
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
and you can't stop it. You can't stop it because there's too many smart people out there working day and night, like me and my partner, to generate these solutions.
what I like about AI, it's also I'm hesitant to say outsmarting the people, but definitely finding ways around human knowledge and creating new knowledge out of it through.
It's unbelievable. I've received lots of scientific magazines, very, very frequently. Nature, Science, a whole lot. Okay, and I see almost in every issue. A recent application was looking at tens of thousands of studies that were done for different materials and looking at materials whose primary purpose was just okay and had a secondary and tertiary use. But when analyzed, a human being could not analyze all that. So using AI, new applications of an existing metal or existing
Sure.
material were found, but a human being would have never looked at those secondary and tertiary attributes. But using AI, you're able to put it together and say, here's an application that we never thought of. And it's happening also with pharmaceuticals. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
the human brain is wonderful, but it has limits. And AI is the human brain on steroids. Like maybe not such a
Yes.
good metaphor, but
Well, it's actually a huge, it has access to a huge memory beyond the human capacity. The algorithm or the methodologies similar to human thinking for correlation, inference, and so on. And one thing to add on AI, it's actually also helping the research in the brain because now people want to understand better how the human brain, so we can better copy it
well, I hope they're working
or
hard.
emulate or emulate. Let's be more. Coming to that, a really quick question and equally important is what do you recommend to students in sustainability? Students are not necessarily only the Gen Zers and Gen Alpha coming up and studying in school in the first degree, but people that change their careers as well.
What do I recommend in terms of sustainability?
On education, how we educate.
Um, I, I, I apologize for this, but I never studied anthropology. I never studied, I was just a math kind of very economics, math, operations, research, technical person. But when it came to diffusing new ideas, I didn't appreciate the importance of understanding how groups respond to new ideas. Just pushing a new idea forward because it's cost effective can be frustrating. But when the recipient of that knowledge can't do anything with it because it comes in a way that they're unfamiliar with. It's not packaged right. I didn't know how to package it correctly. It's almost like, how do you sell ice cream? How do I sell a good idea? And it's going to be different inside the boardroom. It's different at the trading level, and it's going to be different in different countries at the boardroom, trading level, sea level. And I think a course in understanding, maybe that's group psychology, maybe it's not anthropology. That how does that happen? And I would have been better off with a greater appreciation about how the world, how groups think about decision making. Uh, does that make sense to you?
That's an excellent perspective, but I'll spend a minute on the reverse perspective, which is you have a room of buyers, people that already they want the knowledge. And now you no longer have the seller, you don't need to sell it. You need to fulfill their needs of knowledge for sustainability, or knowledge for ESG, or knowledge for environmental. And there are specialized and generalists, right? Like anything else. Somebody wants to look at the big problem. Many people want to look at the, let's call it an atomic level, I should say.
Well, I only can comment that on sustainability issues, I'm not sure if it's a top down or bottom up route to diffuse, but from the bottom side, um, finding applications that work, that make people happy, that make money, that minimize risks, that's powerful. At the top level, you've got to you need money. Money is the mother's milk of progress. Somebody's got to pay that consultant or pay for that person to go to a course in this or pay for this or pay for that. You've got to allocate. If it's in the strategic plan, it has to be translated into something operational. All these strategic plans say, we're going to make the world better and we're going to be great and the shareholders are going to love us and the stakeholders are going to love us even more, but it doesn't happen unless it gets translated into key performance indicators as you go right down. And without that, it's just a piece of paper. We can throw that away. And with that kind of integration, everything can happen.
Thank you for illuminating actually the knowledge transfer process that you just did. And I'd like to invite you back anytime soon, and I hope we'll continue to collaborate. I want to really thank you for taking the time to visit with us today. And to our audience, make sure to tune in every week for a new episode of AKFI Actionable ESG Talk Series. You'll gain new perspectives. You'll meet people like John today, which bring knowledge, bring really wealth of information to mitigate risk and create value by integrating ESG and digital transformation. And of course, we talked a lot about AI. Thank you very much, John.
Thank
And
you.
I hope to see you soon.
Thank you and have a good day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.